Hi and welcome to this video log with me, Wayne, from swimmingcyclingrunning.com. Well, this in the second in the series of the 5 biggest mistakes that I see people make when they swim. We're going to deal with breathing. Now, breathing's clearly hugely important because we need to breathe just to live. But when we're doing sport, we actually need to breathe to fuel our muscles with oxygen to enable us to do anything. We all know that feeling when we're getting oxygen debt and we just can't get enough breath in. Well, that's not good enough with swimming, and swimming has one additional problem. When we put our head in the water, we actually can't breathe. So there's a limited amount of time when we can actually get that breath we really need to fuel ourselves to do what we're trying to do. And that's when I see a problem lots of times. Let's go to the computer and have a look at what I mean. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this water. And as he goes underwater, we'll see that he's breathing every 3 strokes, but also that as his head is underwater, he's not exhaling at all. You can see there's no bubbles coming from his mouth or nose, which means what he's doing, he's really explosively exhaling just before he turns to breathe. So now he's going to explosively exhale. And that really doesn't give him time enough to actually finish his exhalation and take a really good inhalation whilst he's going down the length. And we're trying to make this swimmer an easier swimmer who can swim for longer and faster. And something happens to him by the time he hits his second length that's really important. So we'll rejoin him second length. And now you'll notice that he's not breathing every 3s anymore, he's breathing every 2. And his stroke has really sped up. And his stroke sped up is because he's struggling to get that breath in, because he's not exhaling before he turns his head. You can see it's a really explosive exhale, and then he's got to really inhale very quickly. And that just panics him a little bit. He speeds up his arms because he needs to breathe more. And this is just generally a circle of decline where you have to breathe more and your arms have to go faster to feed your breath. And that's the wrong way round. We really want to turn that on its head. Okay, so generally when we go, we haven't got enough time to bring in the air we need. So what we really need is a controlled, and then when we turn to the side, we're ready to inhale as soon as we can. But there's also something else that actually comes with exhaling underwater. Let's go back to the computer and look at a slightly more accomplished swimmer doing exactly that. Now we're going to take a look at a particularly accomplished swimmer. He's a national swimmer. And we'll see what he does when his head's in the water. Now, it may not look like it, but he is actually breathing out every time his head goes in the water. Let's just take that back a touch. Now you see his head's in the water, and you can see from his nose a stream of bubbles coming out. But can you see what's happening to those bubbles? They're actually travelling underneath his body. If we look at it here, as he breathes those bubbles out, you can see them going underneath his body. And if we take a look just here, you can see those bubbles coming underneath his body. And they actually raise him up just a touch and make it easier for good swimmers to swim. And you can see that stream of bubbles coming right underneath his body, right the way through the back. And they actually aid in his swimming, completely different to the swimmer before. So with good swimmers, we actually see this exhalation of air that goes underneath the body and actually assists them to go fast in the water. So when we exhale underwater, especially through our nose, we get a stream of bubbles that runs underneath our body. That actually aids us when we're swimming. Now, it's not a huge amount of aid, but it is an aid. And you can see that set of bubbles going underneath the body. And the weird thing is, it happens with 99% of good swimmers. So swimmers just seem to do this automatically. They exhale under the body and they get these bubbles coming through that really aids them when they're swimming. Now obviously when the experienced fast swimmers are doing it, they are swimming at a fast pace. It's slightly different when you aren't swimming at a fast pace, but let's go back to the computer and have a look at a couple of examples. So we're trying to do 2 things as we control our breathing. The first thing is to exhale underwater so that we turn and breathe and we're ready to inhale. We don't have any wasted time. And the second thing is we're trying to get those bubbles underneath our body if at all possible. Now you can see a few bubbles here coming underneath the body. And as he exhales, they mostly go up the side, but some will actually go under his body there. So as some go under the body, he is actually helping himself. But the important thing with this swimmer is he's actually slowed his arms down, so he's now controlling his breathing through his arms. And so long as he does that, he's never going to get into panic mode. And that's hugely important, especially for triathletes. And here we have another swimmer who's slower, and therefore they won't get those bubbles coming underneath the body. But you can see she's exhaling under the water, and so she can take a breath. Instantly she rotates to breathe, and her head can come back into the water fairly quickly because she's not panicked to breathe, and she can inhale completely without actually having to rush her breath. You can see she's going down the length quite nicely, quite comfortably, and there's no panic breathing there. Now head position does become important, because here we have an actual faster swimmer, not a national swimmer, but a faster triathlete, and they are breathing out. You can see from the nose they are breathing out, but because he's looking so far forward, he hasn't got a chance to get those bubbles coming underneath his body. As he starts breathing here, you can see the bubbles are coming right by his face. They're going off in that direction because effectively he's looking there, and his chin's very much forward. So the position of his head aren't allowing those bubbles to come underneath his body. And this is a swimmer that generally will be a top triathlete swimmer when he actually does competitions. So we need to lower that head, get that body up, so that the bubbles, instead of going up the side of him, go underneath and actually assist in his swimming. Now let's just compare where these two swimmers are actually looking. You can see that in the first case, the national swimmer is looking virtually down, and the other swimmer is looking forward. And that makes a complete difference as to where these bubbles are going. You can see the bubbles are going straight underneath the body there, and straight up the side of the face there. So there's a difference between looking slightly down and forward. So we need that trickle breath out, not so much for the bubbles, because you might not get those under your body, but we need that trickle breath out so when we rotate, we're ready to intake that huge inhalation of air, and we've given ourselves huge amounts of time. If you exhale and you're still exhaling, you've got to gulp air in, and that's never good. You want your breathing to be controlled at all times. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you think about exhaling underwater so that you can actually get enough air in your lungs to fuel your swimming. Without that, you hyperventilate, you lose oxygen, and you feel like you're in oxygen debt very quickly. Okay, thanks very much for watching. See you next week.